Okay, so picture this Thanksgiving at my family's place. And yeah, they've been mocking my art career for years. Uncle Gary, classic, laughs and just tosses me a container of leftovers like I'm some charity case. And then my sister's new boyfriend shows up, sees me, and whispers, totally terrified, "That's my CEO." Right then, I realized, okay, this is going to be interesting. Tension thick, family judgments flying, and me just wondering how this is all going to play out. You kind of have to see it to believe it. The gravel crunched beneath the tires of my 2014 Honda Civic, and immediately, that familiar tightening gripped my chest. Weird, right? It's not like the car has ever failed me, it's a beast under the hood, but to my family, it screams something else entirely. To me, it's a smart investment, a depreciated asset letting me funnel capital back into my business during the lean years. To them, it's a rolling billboard of failure. I turned off the ignition and just sat there for a moment, letting the silence settle. My knuckles were white as I gripped the steering wheel, the late November air biting through the open window just enough to make me shiver. I watched my breath fog the windshield, curling in little clouds, and thought, okay, just a minute, just 60 seconds to armor myself. I needed it. I needed a moment to get my head straight. My eyes flicked to the rearview mirror. No designer sunglasses, no flashy jewelry, just a beige sweater and jeans. I looked exactly like what they expected Alina. The struggling dreamer, the cautionary tale they could all nod at and feel superior about. "You can do this," I whispered to my own reflection. 4 hours. Eat the turkey, smile at the insults, and go home. Go back to the life they'll never understand. My life. If only they knew. But not yet. Not while the business is still fragile, or better yet, booming. I knew them too well. I knew the moment struggling Alina became wealthy Alina. It wouldn't flip to respect. No, it would flip to entitlement, greed, curiosity about what I could give them next. I exhaled slowly, the cold air burning my lungs, and braced myself. Stepping out of the car, the chill hit my cheeks hard. I zipped up my sweater, shoulders tight, and started up the driveway. Already, laughter spilled out from inside the house. It was loud and familiar, that dull roar of the family gathering, the sound that used to make me feel safe as a child. But now it felt like a wall, a circle I'd never be allowed inside. I rang the doorbell, each chime echoing in the crisp air, and waited. Not my parents' house, they retired to Florida years ago, skipping the cold. This was Uncle Gary's domain. Gary, my father's older, louder, infinitely judgmental brother. The door swung open, and there was my cousin, Sarah, my sister in spirit if not blood, looking flawless. Black dress, hair perfect, makeup on point. She glowed, the picture of success my family loved to put next to me. Pity in her eyes, the kind you give a stray dog, and a faint annoyance that I even showed up. "Alina," she said, but her smile didn't reach her eyes. "You made it. We were worried your car might not handle the interstate." I forced a smile, stepping inside. "Hi, Sarah. She runs fine. Good to see you." She hummed, already leading me into the foyer. Uncle Gary's famous martinis, she mentioned, and Liam. Oh, the new boyfriend. Big corporate emergency. You know how it is? She paused, tilted her head at me. "Well, actually, I guess you don't. How's the consulting?" The invisible air quotes landed like slaps. "It's going well. Sarah, I said, trying to keep my voice neutral. Busy, she chirped, tone dripping with condescension. Keeps the lights on. Right, mostly. The house smelled like polished wood and roasting turkey, a warmth that used to feel comforting, now suffocating. I followed her into the living room, and everything stopped the moment Uncle Gary saw me. His eyes scanned from head to toe worn boots, no luxury handbag, simple sweater. A smirk spread slow and oily across his face. Well, he boomed. The prodigal niece returns, thrifty as always. A ripple of polite, uncomfortable laughter. Aunt Debbie, clutching her wine glass, gave me a tight nod, sympathetic but silent. "Hi, Uncle Gary," I said, keeping my composure. "Happy Thanksgiving?" "Happy Thanksgiving." "Kid," he said, sipping his drink. "I hope you brought an appetite. We made extra." We know how tough grocery bills are these days for the self-employed. Emphasis on self-employed, like a disease. I felt heat rise in my neck, humiliation mixed with quiet anger. The betrayal wasn't ignorance. It was that they enjoyed their version of the truth, loved poor Alina, and it made them feel superior. I forced myself to smile. "I'm doing fine. Gary, sure. He winked. That's what they all say until rent is due. But hey, family is family. Grab a drink, bottom shelves in the kitchen. Laughter echoed louder this time. I walked to the kitchen, heart pounding like a trapped bird. Passing the hallway mirror, I caught my own eyes, not watery, hard, angry, but calculated. This wasn't just about insults, it was dismissal, a denial of my worth based on a bank balance they assumed was empty. A spark of defiance lit in my chest. Just wait, I thought. Just wait. The kitchen buzzed with catering staff. Uncle Gary loved flashy expenditure, making a point without lifting a finger. I poured water, no wine, needing clarity. By the granite island, steam from the potatoes rose like little clouds, and I let my mind drift to my office, to nexusinovations, my baby, my empire. Started in a garage Gary joked about. 7 years later, 200 brilliant minds in tech consultancy, transforming Fortune 500 silently. Not just surviving, I just closed a deal bigger than Uncle Gary's lifetime earnings. But in this kitchen, I was nobody. I leaned against the counter, letting Sarah chatter about Liam, about turkey standards, about high-end lunches, oblivious to the fire kindling inside me. Their expectations, my calm, the contrast, all readying me for what was to come. This Honda, this cold, gravelly driveway, this fogged-up windshield, it was more than a car, more than anxiety. It was the battlefield, and I was ready to walk in. I stepped through the front door, and immediately, the house hit me not with warmth, exactly, but with this weight. It was a sound of laughter, clinking glasses, the subtle hum of luxury that always made me feel like an outsider. And there was Sarah, my cousin, radiant in a black dress that probably cost more than my first 2 cars combined. Perfect hair, flawless makeup, the kind of glow that made you think, wow, she's exactly what everyone wants me to be. She smiled, but it wasn't warm. It was a smile you give a stray dog that wandered onto the porch pity with just a hint of annoyance. "Elena," she said, voice light, almost too cheerful. "You made it. We were worried your car might not handle the interstate." My lips pressed together in a forced smile. "Hi, Sarah. She runs fine." "Good to see you," she hummed, already turning away to lead me into the foyer, moving as if I were barely there. barely relevant. Then came the mention of Uncle Gary's famous martinis and Liam, her boyfriend, stuck in some big corporate emergency, or so she claimed. She glanced back at me, tilting her head, a little smirk playing at the corners of her lips. Well, actually, I guess you don't. How's what do you call it? The consulting air quotes hung invisible in the air, but I felt the sting as if they were slaps. My stomach clenched, and my jaw tightened. It's going well, Sarah, I said, careful to keep my voice neutral, almost boring. Busy, she chirped, dripping with condescension. Keeps the lights on. Right. Mostly, I thought, mostly. That subtle little phrase, it was loaded, like they were assuming I barely survived, barely belonged in this room. We walked into the living room, and the laughter stopped dead the second Uncle Gary spotted me. He froze, eyes scanning me from head to toe, the boots that had seen better days, the sweater that marked me as what they expected, struggling, scrappy, the family's cautionary tale, then that smirk, slow and oily, spreading across his face. Well, he boomed. The prodigal niece returns, thrifty as always. Polite, uncomfortable laughter rippled through the room. Aunt Debbie, holding her wine glass like a shield, gave me a tight nod. She never spoke up, never challenged the narrative. I forced a calm, steady smile. Hi, Uncle Gary. Happy Thanksgiving. Happy Thanksgiving. Kid, he replied, taking a sip of his drink. I hope you brought an appetite. We made extra. We know how tough grocery bills are these days for the self-employed. The emphasis, the tone, it wasn't concern. It was a label, a judgment. Heat crawled up my neck. The humiliation was sharp, but somewhere inside, a tiny spark of anger flared. They weren't ignorant. They were invested in their version of the truth. Poor Alina, a cautionary tale. I was supposed to fit that mold. I'm doing fine, Gary, I said quietly. Sure. He winked at the room. That's what they all say until the rent is due. But hey, family is family. Grab a drink. Bottom shelf is in the kitchen. The laughter rolled through the room again. Richer this time, like a wave washing over me. I moved toward the kitchen, heart thudding like a trapped bird. Passing the hallway mirror, I caught my own reflection. Steady eyes, no tears, just hard, determined. The mockery stung. Yes, but worse was the assumption that my worth could be measured by what I drive, what I wear, how flashy I appeared. A spark of defiance lit inside me. Just wait, I thought. Just wait. In the kitchen, the temporary sanctuary of polished granite counters and the hum of a catering staff, I let my mind drift to my office, to Nexusinovations, my empire. From a one-woman garage startup to a 200-person team transforming Fortune 500 companies. My life was nothing like what they imagined. But here, in this kitchen, I was still the afterthought. Sarah, scrolling her phone, was checking Liam, probably fretting he wasn't lost in a corporate fire. God, I hope the turkey isn't dry, she said. He's used to such high standards, you know. His company serves lunch every day from 5-star restaurants. I leaned against the counter. Sounds nice, I muttered, letting the irony hang. She looked at me with that same pitying expression, the one I knew too well. Look, Alina, I know Gary is Gary, but he means well. He's just worried. We all are. Worried I raised an eyebrow. Worried about what your future, she sighed, putting her phone down. You're 34, driving a rust bucket, Still consulting on little projects. Liam said his company is actually hiring entry-level support staff. I could put in a word. It's steady money, dental benefits, wrapped in kindness. But the poison was in the subtext. She wanted me boxed, diminished. I kept my voice steady. I appreciate it, Sarah. Really, I'm happy where I am. She rolled her eyes and grabbed a bottle of Chardonnay. Pride doesn't pay for retirement, Alina. Just think about it. Don't be stupid. And she was gone, leaving her words like stale smoke trailing through the kitchen. Don't be stupid. I followed her out, taking a deep breath as we approached the dining room. The table was a masterpiece of excess crystal, silver, fine china, a seating chart like a general's strategy, Gary at the head, Sarah to his right, the empty chair for Liam next to her. My name card was at the end, wedged between a fern and Aunt Debbie the kid's spot, the afterthought. Sit, Gary commanded, clapping his hands. Let's get this show on the road. Liam can catch up. Time is money. Right. Well, for some of us, I took my seat, heart hammering, appetizers past shrimp cocktail, stuffed mushrooms. Gary pointed his fork at me. Elena, Sarah tells me you're still doing the, what is it? Computer fixing tech consultancy, I corrected. Smooth and quiet. Optimization strategies for enterprise software. Right. He waved dismissively. Fixing computers. I told a friend who owns a dealership to hire you for his Facebook page. Pays $15 an hour. Cash. Silence hit the table. They still didn't see me for who I really was. I sipped water, letting the spark inside me grow. I wasn't just a struggling consultant. They'd forgotten I was a builder, a creator, a force they hadn't accounted for. And that spark, that early defiance, was ready to flare. The dining room was a study in extravagance, every detail calculated to impress, or perhaps to intimidate. Crystal, silver, fine china laid out like a battlefield, each plate a silent reminder of the wealth and status my family wielded like armor. Uncle Gary, perched at the head of the table, looked every bit the patriarch, chest puffed out, eyes scanning the room for admiration. I took my seat at the very end, the one that felt like the family's afterthought, wedged between a fern and Aunt Debbie. The air was warm with the scent of roasted turkey, rich gravy, and subtle hints of someone's expensive perfume. Yet under all that, there was this hum of judgment, a silent chorus that seemed to say, "This is your place, Alina." Remember that, as appetizers passed shrimp cocktail. Stuffed mushrooms, I felt the familiar tightness in my chest, the old pulse of anxiety. Gary's eyes locked on me, and he pointed his fork with theatrical precision. Elena, Sarah tells me you're still doing the, what is it? Computer fixing tech consultancy, I corrected him smoothly, quietly. Optimization strategies for enterprise software. He waved his hand dismissively. Right. Fixing computers. Listen, I was talking to a buddy who owns a dealership out on Route 9. He needs someone to manage his Facebook page. Post pictures of trucks, that sort of thing. I told him my niece is a whiz with the internet. Pays $15 an hour. Cash. The room fell silent for a heartbeat. I could almost hear the polite laughter stifled behind napkins. They were offering me the CEO of a growing tech consultancy, a teenage internship. My lips pressed together, a small, tight smile playing at the corners, as if humor might mask the absurdity. Internally, I chuckled dryly. They had no idea. Not yet. They saw the Honda, not the Panamera I had parked 3 blocks away. They saw thrift, not the empire quietly humming behind my calm facade. Gary's grin widened, smug. As he reached under the table, my stomach sank a little when he pulled out a stack of plastic Tupperware containers. Old, stained with tomato sauce from meals long past, and slid them towards me. They clattered against the fine china and stopped right in front of my plate. "I know you're too proud to ask," he said, voice dripping with faux generosity. "But we've got a ton of food. You take these, pack 'em full, saves you from buying ramen for a week. Right? Consider it an early Christmas gift." A hush fell over the room. Even Sarah looked down at her plate, uncomfortable. Aunt Debbie swallowed audibly, as if trying to digest the humiliation along with the food. This wasn't just leftovers. This was a public performance of charity, a display meant to mark me as the family's failure, elevate him as provider. I stared at the stained containers, then at Gary. My smile tightened, polite but brittle. "Thank you, Gary," I said softly. "I'll keep that in mind," he roared with satisfaction. "That's the spirit she'll probably ask for leftovers before the turkey is even carved. Am I right?" His laughter boomed. I laughed too, a dry, hollow sound that letting it roll off me, all the while thinking, they have no idea. None of them. They're playing a script I wrote long ago. They think they're the directors. I know I'm in the control room. I let my gaze drift to the empty chair next to Sarah. Liam would be here soon, and I could sense the anticipation Sarah carried, the nervous energy before the grand reveal. I leaned against the countertop for a moment, sipping my water, taking in the bustling kitchen, the catering staff, the polished granite, the gleaming silver, flashy expenditure, Uncle Gary's style, meant to prove a point. I let my mind wander to Nexusinovations, my true stage. 7 years ago, just me and a laptop in a tiny garage. Now, 200 of the brightest minds. Fortune 500 companies quietly transforming under our guidance. Deals closed worth more than Uncle Gary's lifetime earnings. Yet here, behind the stack of Tupperware, I was invisible to them. Sarah exhaled, putting down her phone. Liam is 10 minutes out. God, I hope the turkey isn't dry. He's used to high standards. You know, his company serves lunch every day from 5-star restaurants. I leaned against the counter. Sounds nice, I muttered, letting the irony linger. She tilted her head, peering at me like I was a curious specimen. Look, Elena, I know Gary is Gary, but he means well. He's just worried. We all are. I raised an eyebrow. Worried about what? My future, she sighed. The exasperation feigned. You're 34, driving a rust bucket, still consulting on little projects. Liam said his company is actually hiring entry-level support staff. I could put in a word. It's steady money. Benefits, dental. She handed me advice wrapped in kindness, but laced with poison. I forced my tone steady. I appreciate it, Sarah. Really, I'm happy where I am. She rolled her eyes, grabbed a bottle of Chardonnay, and left the kitchen, leaving her words to hang like smoke. Don't be stupid. A small, ironic grin tugged at my lips. Don't be stupid. Little did they know who I really was. Returning to the dining room, I took in the scene Gary carving the turkey like a surgeon, piling bone-dry meat onto everyone's plates. His performance, a ritual of control. Eat up, Alina, he commanded. Protein brain food. Maybe it'll help you figure out a business plan. Sarah giggled. Dad, stop, you're terrible. And she didn't stop him. She was complicit in the ritual, bonding over my supposed failure. I pushed the peas around my plate silently, thoughts ticking. They had no idea. They had forgotten that I was a builder, a creator. I knew how to construct and deconstruct, to manipulate systems they thought they controlled. I was quiet, composed, but my mind was active, strategic. Every insult, every faux compliment, every Tupperware container was part of a play they thought they directed, but I was the playwright behind the scenes. Gary turned the conversation toward finances, the annual shakedown grandma's assisted living. The rates are going up again in January, he announced solemnly. Inflation, it's killing us. $5,000 a month. That's what it takes. He scanned the room like he expected awe. I don't ask for thanks. That's the head of the family for you. I felt my lips twitch, a controlled smirk forming. I knew differently. I was paying quietly, anonymously, making sure everything was covered while they basked in the illusion of superiority. The betrayal of their assumptions, their self-satisfied narrative, lit a small, strategic fire inside me. Sarah, predictably, leaned in. Elena, maybe you could visit more. You have so much free time. I set my fork down slowly, letting the metallic clink against the china mark the moment. My thoughts were sharp, cold. They didn't know the truth. They couldn't. Not yet. And that gave me power. I allowed the sparks of quiet defiance to grow, the kind that fueled strategy and patience. They saw one version of me, a version I allowed them to see. But underneath, the real me, methodical, prepared, entirely aware, was ready. Every comment, every mockery, every Tupperware slide, it was fuel. They thought they were the hunters. I knew the roles had subtly shifted. I was watching, learning, calculating, and the plan was already forming in my head. Patience, timing, and the reveal that would dismantle their assumptions entirely. The doorbell rang just as the tension in the room had reached a simmering pitch. Sarah practically squealed, springing to her feet like a kid on Christmas morning. "That's Liam," she whispered, her voice a mix of excitement and relief. I stayed seated, heart steady, letting the moment unfold. From the corner of my eye, I watched Uncle Gary straighten his tie, puff out his chest, and prepare to showcase yet another male success for the family to admire. Someone he could compare me to and feel superior. It was almost comical, if the stakes weren't so high. The foyer doors swung open, revealing Liam. He was tall, sharp-looking, in a suit that was decent but clearly off the rack. He carried a bottle of wine in one hand, a bouquet in the other, and radiated that peculiar energy of someone trying desperately to impress. His movements were precise, almost mechanical, like a marionette whose strings were tangled. Every glance he cast seemed rehearsed, and yet there was this raw nervousness beneath the surface. Gary launched into his usual patter, shaking Liam's hand with exaggerated force. "It's an honor to finally meet you. Sarah has told me so much about your guidance of the family. Good things." I hope Liam chuckled politely, though the tension around his eyes betrayed his anxiety. He seemed like the perfect novice, eager to play the part expected of him, but not quite fitting in yet. I allowed myself a faint smile, amused at the contrast between their expectations and the reality only I knew. As he turned to Sarah, Gary gestured vaguely toward me. "And, well, this is our niece, Alina. She's doing her best." The dismissal in his tone was palpable. The room seemed to absorb my presence and compress it into insignificance. Or at least that was the narrative they were projecting. Liam's gaze flickered toward me, polite and calculated. But there was that subtle hesitation, the first crack in his composed demeanor. And then it hit me. Liam Hastings, the developer we'd hired 4 months ago, the portfolio, the interviews, the strategic hires, he was mine. He didn't know yet, of course, or at least he hadn't realized the scale of the person sitting quietly, barely participating in this family theater, who was actually the one who signed his checks and guided his work. In that instant, the room's energy shifted for me. They assumed I was weak, that I was small, insignificant, a cautionary tale. In reality, I was quietly in control, observing every angle, every body language cue, every word. The family's ignorance of my true position was an advantage I could wield with precision. Sarah fidgeted, her excitement not quite masking the nervousness she felt on Liam's behalf. "He's just so nervous to meet you, Uncle Gary," she explained, almost defensively. "I told him you're the patriarch of the family." "Damn straight," Gary replied, puffing up even further. And then they stepped into the dining room. Liam's eyes scanned the table, the lavish display, and landed near me. The subtle tension in his body spoke volumes. He had never imagined the CEO of Nexusinovations of all people was sitting here, under the radar, calmly sipping water while the family misjudged me entirely. It was a silent revelation that passed over him in fractions of a second, his mind racing as the room's theatrics collided with reality. Gary, oblivious to the storm brewing in Liam's mind, continued his grandiose welcome. He gestured vaguely toward the end of the table, his voice dripping with dismissive authority. "Don't mind her, she's harmless." I held my gaze on Liam, letting the words land, not in truth, but in the perception Gary wanted to create. The contrast couldn't have been sharper. The family believed I was the weak one, the trivial figure, while in reality, I was the one holding the real power. Sitting quietly, reading the room, and noting every nuance, I sipped my water slowly, deliberately, as Liam's eyes locked on me. His posture stiffened, the polite facade faltering as recognition dawned, not of me personally, but of my role, my authority, the invisible hand guiding the very enterprise he thought he was part of, casually. The tension was palpable, almost physical, every second stretched, filled with unspoken realization, anticipation, and a hint of fear. He understood, even if the rest of the family did not, that I wasn't a passive participant in this dinner. I was the architect behind the scenes, and the theater unfolding around him was just a stage for a revelation that would quietly, and perhaps irrevocably, shift the power dynamics. Sarah, still caught in her own excitement, didn't notice the shift. "He just got promoted to senior lead developer," she whispered to me, her voice betraying awe as she glanced at Liam. "He manages a huge team. Says the CEO is a total visionary but terrifying. Never actually met him, just seen him at town halls. Massive operation." My pulse quickened slightly, not out of a fear, but anticipation. Liam's position, his proximity to the truth, added a new layer to the strategy I had already begun orchestrating in my mind. The family was playing checkers, oblivious to the three-dimensional chessboard I had been constructing quietly for years. Liam's gaze flickered again, darting from me to Gary and back. He froze momentarily, the bouquet in his hand slightly tilting, the bottle of wine threatening to slip. It was as if he was trying to reconcile two incompatible realities, the eager young employee and the CEO he had been silently following in corporate updates, the woman whose strategies had directed his work. He blinked rapidly, swallowing hard, the color draining from his face. The tension coiled around his Adam's apple, tightening with every passing second. Each breath measured, each blink a careful calculation. Gary's voice cut through the room, shattering the moment like a dropped plate. "Well, don't just stand there. Son, sit right there next to Sarah. You need a drink. You look pale. Tough week at the office." Huh. Liam moved with a jerky puppet-like precision, following the instruction as if the strings were suddenly tugged tighter. He tripped slightly over an ornate rug, steadied himself, and sat, eyes still darting to me. The panic, the nervous energy, was both palpable and almost amusing in its intensity. He was grappling with a revelation that only I could see, while everyone else remained comfortably ignorant. Across the table, Gary continued to chatter about high-stakes software games, leadership philosophy, and the virtues of fear over kindness, entirely unaware that the young man he was trying to impress was internally recalibrating. Liam gripped his wine glass like a lifeline, white knuckles contrasting with the red liquid inside. Every word from Gary was absorbed by Liam's nervous system, filtering through the lens of truth he now recognized in front of him. He understood that this seemingly frail figure at the table wasn't just a relative, they were the hidden force, the one shaping the very company he worked for. I let my thoughts drift briefly, mentally tallying probabilities, considering every conversational thread, every potential reaction from Liam, and even the ripple effects on Sarah, the family's assumptions, their condescension, their laughter. All of it was data. I cataloged it quietly, without ever letting a flicker of arrogance cross my expression. This was more than a family dinner. It was an information-gathering operation, a moment to observe, assess, and plan. Liam's reactions provided critical insight. He was already recalculating his loyalty, his expectations, his next steps. The room was oblivious to the tectonic shift, but I wasn't. And that knowledge gave me a quiet, potent thrill. The air in the room seemed heavier, the polished silver reflecting tension like mirrors, capturing fragments of truth. I could almost hear the family's internal narratives clash with reality, their assumptions meeting the unspoken authority I held. Every movement, every glance, every uttered word was part of a delicate, high-stakes ballet. Liam's nervous energy, Sarah's commentary, Gary's oblivious bluster. They were all pieces in a puzzle that only I fully understood. And I let the suspense stretch, deliberately, allowing it to ripple through the room like an invisible current, each second thick with anticipation, each breath charged with unspoken revelation. The conversation around the table had been a slow burn of tension. But when Gary shifted the topic to Grandma's care, I felt the opportunity for clarity and justice rise. He straightened in his chair, puffing his chest, like he was about to lecture the room on his own generosity. "Now, Alina," he said, voice dripping with condescension, "I know you can't contribute. I'm not asking. But maybe you could at least visit more. You have so much free time. I set my fork down, the metal clinking sharply against the china, and let my eyes linger on him, calmly, as if I were about to deliver a weather report rather than a confrontation. I asked, 5,000 a month. Gary, is that the figure you're telling? Liam. His face shifted, a twitch of color moving across his cheeks. Excuse me, are you questioning my math? I leaned back slightly, my voice steady, almost conversational. I'm just curious. That seems high for the base rate. Unless, of course, you've included administrative fees or other extras. Aunt Debbie gasped. Sarah snapped. Sharp and defensive Elena. You don't pay a dime. You don't get an opinion. I ignored the protests, focusing instead on Liam. You're good with numbers. Right. Does 5,000 sound right for a place like Oak Creek? Liam froze, caught in the crossfire of expectation and truth. Gary glared at him, daring him to side with the niece. Liam's hesitation was palpable. His hands gripped his glass, knuckles whitening. Then he looked at me, and in that instant, recognition passed through his eyes. He wasn't here to judge me. He was here to verify the facts. Well, I prompted lightly. Voice deceptively casual. Does that number add up? Liam's voice wavered, shaking slightly at first. My grandmother was in a place like that. Billing is complex. Transparency is key. Transparency, I echoed, letting the word hang in the air. Gary, how transparent is it when you take partial checks and pocket the rest? He stiffened, the first crack in his armor. I write the checks. Elena, I know what it costs. I let my lips curve into a faint, controlled smile. Sure, but you don't, Gary. You cash Grandma's pension checks, keep the funds, and let me cover the actual bills, anonymously. So the question isn't what you think you pay, it's what actually happens. The room went quiet. Everyone frozen in that delicate space between disbelief and shock. Gary's eyes darted between Liam, me, and his wife. You can't just... He sputtered. I picked up my phone and tapped a few screens, my fingers deliberate, unhurried. Liam, check your phone. I just forwarded a PDF for your professional opinion. It's the billing statement. Have a look, Gary barked, voice high and flustered. Get off your phones. Now Liam ignored him, fingers trembling slightly as he unlocked his device. I watched over the rim of my water glass. As his eyes widened, pupils dilating as the document opened. He blinked, scrolled, and then slowly looked up at me. The comprehension in his gaze was instantaneous. Gary's words, once a mantra of authority, were now utterly meaningless in the face of irrefutable evidence. What is it? Sarah asked, sensing the shift in the air. Liam's voice trembled, but gained clarity as he read aloud. It's a receipt from Oak Creek Assisted Living, 36 months. Paid in full. Gary's face turned ashen. Paid in full. That's impossible. I send the checks every month. I leaned forward, calm and measured, letting the tension stretch without adding unnecessary flourish. Or do you send 500 for incidentals and pocket the rest? Gary, the estate covers the real costs, but you've been misrepresenting it. That's the truth. He stammered, panic rising visibly, veins protruding at his temples. No, that's a lie. That's a fake. You photoshopped this, not fake, Liam interjected, a quiet authority to his tone now. Verified. Digital signature from the institution. Authentic. The room's atmosphere shifted. Sarah's eyes widened. Aunt Debbie's mouth hung slightly open, and Gary's confident posture collapsed under the weight of reality. I didn't rush, didn't raise my voice. I let the quiet, steady authority of the facts speak for me. "Gary," I said softly, almost conversationally, "I've been covering Grandma's care for years. Every detail, every payment. You never noticed, or didn't care to. I kept it quiet because I knew you'd stop if you knew the truth." He laughed, a manic, almost desperate sound. "I pay everything, we can call them right now. You wouldn't dare." "Try it," I said calmly, resting my hand lightly on the table. "Let's call them, check the accounts, audit the payments." I welcome the verification. Gary froze, the reality of his actions settling in. He hadn't anticipated that I could assert authority without confrontation, without yelling, without theatrics. I didn't need to shout or accuse. The documentation did the work for me. The unraveling was surgical, precise, and irreversible. Sarah shifted uncomfortably, trying to intervene. "Alina, stop. You're ruining Thanksgiving. Dad works hard. Why are you attacking him?" I turned my attention to her for a brief moment. Soft, but unwavering. "Sarah, I'm not attacking. I'm clarifying. We're aligning the facts with reality. It's that simple." Gary's breathing became uneven, chest heaving as he tried to regain control, yet every attempt faltered. He pointed fingers, shouted, and attempted to dominate, but the evidence was a wall he couldn't breach. Liam, now standing slightly closer to me, seemed to anchor the room's awareness. His support, quiet and factual, strengthened my position without me uttering a single expletive. "You traitor," Gary bellowed at Liam, his hand shaking in accusation. But Liam stood firm, the document in his hand, the truth undeniable. "Your advice to me was to step on necks. Gary, you told me integrity was for losers. Look at yourself now." The irony was thick. Gary had attempted to present himself as the provider, the head of the family, the one everyone owed respect to. Instead, he had been stripped bare in front of his wife, his daughter, his guests, and the young man he had hoped would impress him. The comedy of errors, the dramatic irony hung heavy in the air, palpable and almost cinematic. I lifted the stack of Tupperware he had offered me earlier, holding it as a symbol, a subtle but cutting contrast to his failed narrative. "Maybe these are more useful to you than they are to me," I said quietly, letting the words settle in the room. Not a shout, not a declaration, just a calm observation that pierced the inflated ego like a scalpel. He spluttered, turning purple-faced, veins pulsing. The narrative he had spent decades constructing: the rich uncle, the generous provider, the patriarch, was gone. In its place, there was only silence, shocked comprehension, and the weight of reality. Aunt Debbie looked on, confusion and dawning realization clouding her face. Sarah's lips parted, eyes wide, processing the collapse of the family mythology she had relied upon. I didn't rush, didn't celebrate. I maintained a steady composure, letting each fact land with precision. The room was thick with the tension of unspoken acknowledgement. Gary's hands trembled, his voice faltered, and the authority he had wielded so casually moments ago evaporated completely. Even as he tried to argue, to reassert dominance, to shout over the facts, the calm, calculated delivery of the evidence, and the strategic positioning of Liam by my side ensured that every claim he made was countered instantly by indisputable truth. The unraveling was methodical, inevitable, and devastating in its clarity. For Sarah, the realization was visceral. Her eyes, once filled with unthinking admiration, now reflected shock, confusion, and the faintest stirrings of guilt. For Aunt Debbie, it was disbelief, and for Gary, it was sheer panic. All while I remained composed, almost serene, knowing that competence, patience, and evidence had achieved more in a single conversation than years of confrontation ever could. The silence that followed was heavy, but controlled. Every breath in the room was a reminder that authority and truth can be wielded quietly, decisively, without theatrics. My calm, measured approach ensured that the focus remained on the facts and the logic, not emotion or exaggeration. Gary's control had unraveled completely. The room's dynamics irreversibly shifted, and the truth had asserted itself without me ever needing to raise my voice, lean forward aggressively, or explain beyond what was necessary. Each moment had been calculated, every word deliberate, every action strategic, and the outcome had been inevitable from the moment I chose to act with precision and clarity. The room was tense, a tight coil of expectation and judgment. Every eye on me as the final act seemed to hang in midair. Gary leaned back, smug, thinking he dominated the evening, that he had reduced me to the struggling niece, the cautionary tale. He didn't notice my hand brushing against the valet key in my pocket, the one that didn't belong to the Honda but to a Porsche Panamera Turbo S parked discreetly 3 blocks away. Calmly, deliberately. I let that realization simmer in my mind before making my move. I lifted my gaze, meeting Gary's expectant, predatory stare. "You've been wondering all night about my career." "Gary," I began, voice even, measured, almost conversational. "Let me clear it up. I'm not just consulting, not just keeping my lights on with small projects. I'm the CEO of Nexusinovations." The words hung in the air, too casual to seem like a proclamation, yet loaded with the gravity of truth. Gary's smirk faltered, just the slightest twitch. Aunt Debbie blinked, confusion flitting across her face. Sarah's jaw dropped, a whisper of disbelief escaping her lips. "Wait," what she murmured, barely audible. I let a pause stretch, drawing the room into the space of suspense. "Nexusinovations," I continued, my tone calm, serene even. 7 years ago, it started in a garage, just me, a laptop, and a vision. Today, it's grown into a team of 200 of the brightest minds in tech consultancy, shaping enterprise solutions for Fortune 500 companies worldwide. The reaction was immediate and visceral. Gary's hand tightened around his martini glass, his knuckles white, his face shifting from disbelief to shock, then to anger. Sarah's eyes were wide, her carefully constructed admiration for her father warring with this new, destabilizing truth. Aunt Debbie covered her mouth, her wine glass trembling in her hand. Liam's eyes, however, had sharpened, recognition flickering as he pieced together the full scale of my authority. I leaned back slightly, letting the gravity settle into the room. "And here's the part I think you'll appreciate the most," I said, calm, deliberate. I reached into my pocket and produced the valet key, letting it slide across the mahogany table with a heavy, satisfying clatter. "Not for the Honda. Gary." "This," I said, letting my fingers linger on the embossed crest. Is the key to a Panamera Turbo S parked in the executive lot? Spot number 1. Gasps echoed around the table. Aunt Debbie's wine glass trembled in midair. Sarah's hands clutched at the table edge, her face paling. Gary's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water, his entire narrative of dominance crumbling. He leaned forward, voice shaking. What? What is this? What are you saying? I kept my voice steady, confident, unflinching. I'm saying, Gary, that I'm not who you think I am. I'm not the struggling niece. I'm the founder, the CEO, the architect of Nexusinovations. And yes, I'm the one making the decisions here. The room held a thick silence. The weight of my calm authority pressed down like a physical presence. Gary's face twisted with disbelief and fury. You're lying. This is impossible. You drive that Honda. You're just a kid playing at business. I shook my head slowly, letting the gravity of the moment sink in. No. Gary, I drive the Honda because I choose to, not because I have to. I don't need to flaunt my success for your approval. I wanted to come here, enjoy Thanksgiving, and maybe, just maybe, have a normal conversation. But you've spent decades constructing a narrative of me as inferior. Tonight, I'm correcting it. Liam, standing by my side, nodded subtly, confirming with his presence the reality of what I'd just revealed. The young developer had been carefully assessing the family, reading their reactions, and now the weight of my authority was undeniable in his eyes as well. Sarah's face turned to him, searching for a counterbalance, but he merely gave a small, steady nod in my direction. I let my eyes sweep the room, and because I know you've been making assumptions about who's paying for Grandma's care, I held up another subtle artifact, the digital record of the payments, without a hint of rush or aggression. I bought the nursing home, Gary, Oak Creek, every bit of it, paid for, managed, upgraded. All the care you've been pretending to provide. It's been handled by me, quietly, competently, without the theatrics or the lies. The silence in the room thickened. Gary's eyes bulged, veins throbbing. Aunt Debbie's hand flew to her mouth, trembling. Sarah's lips parted in shock, a mix of awe and betrayal. Liam's expression was calm but intense, his understanding of the corporate and personal stakes complete. Gary finally spoke, his voice cracking. You can't, Monopoly money. You bought it with what I smiled faintly, soft and controlled, with skill, with strategy, with foresight, the same way I've built Nexus. No one handed me anything. I've earned every bit of this. And you, Gary, have just been shown the gap between perception and reality. He sputtered, thrashing for control. This is delusional. Call the police. Sarah. She's losing it. She's dangerous. Sarah recoiled, eyes wide, but Liam intervened with a quiet authority. No one's delusional here. The documentation is verified. The account's clear. The facts are undeniable. I let the calm confidence wash over me. I didn't need to shout, to exaggerate, or to over-explain. The facts, the strategic unveiling, and the silent support of someone like Liam, a witness to the truth, were enough. The reversal of expectation, the subversion of the narrative that had long dictated my place in the family, was complete. Gary's authority, long assumed, had evaporated. Each reaction around the table underscored it. Sarah's previous condescension and blind loyalty were cracking. Her worldview was destabilized. Aunt Debbie's protective, apologetic stance toward him faltered. Liam, once nervous, now became an anchor, quietly affirming the validity of the revelations. And I, calm, composed, fully aware of the emotional and strategic stakes, watched as the balance of power shifted irrevocably. I reached for the stack of Tupperware Gary had tried to thrust upon me earlier, holding it up casually. "Perhaps these will be more useful to you than they are to me," I said softly, almost conversationally. The symbolism wasn't lost on anyone. The contrast between the family's assumptions and the reality of my status was as tangible as the key I had just laid down. Gary's face flushed purple, veins pulsing, every defensive reflex failing. He turned, sputtering, his voice rising and falling in a frantic rhythm of disbelief and anger. You planned this. You came here tonight just to humiliate me." I leaned forward slightly, smoothing my sweater, calm and deliberate. "I came here for turkey, Gary. You served up the truth. I just made sure everyone saw it." The realization hit him fully, the psychological weight of the evening collapsing his constructed image. The room was quiet, save for the subtle breathing of those around us, everyone processing the reversal of assumptions, the sudden clarity of authority and competence that I had silently carried into this dinner. Liam took a step back, observing the aftermath. Sarah, for once, looked at me without the filter of awe or fear, her expression a mixture of horror, admiration, and recalibration. Aunt Debbie's face reflected a dawning understanding, a slow realization that the niece they had underestimated, mocked, and dismissed had orchestrated a precise unveiling of truth and capability that none of them had seen coming. I didn't need to shout or assert dominance through volume. Every gesture, every calm revelation, every subtle artifact, the key, the receipts, the digital confirmations spoke louder than any accusation. I had reversed expectations, redefined my status, and claimed authority in a room that had long assumed I was powerless. The emotional payoff was complete, measured, and deeply satisfying. And finally, as I stood in quiet confidence, surveying the stunned tableau of family, employee, and guests, I allowed myself a brief internal reflection. The journey from the struggling niece, driving a Honda and enduring quiet mockery, to CEO and strategic benefactor of both Nexusinovations and Oak Creek Nursing Home, was complete. The tension, the judgment, the assumptions, they were all laid bare, dismantled with precision and calm assurance. Tonight, the narrative had changed, and for the first time in years, I was fully recognized for who I truly was: competent, powerful, and utterly in control of my own story. Sitting back in my office months later, watching the city lights, I couldn't help but smile. Gary's empire of ego crumbled house sold, trust funds exposed, part-time gigs for him. Meanwhile, I was full literally and figuratively CEO of a thriving company, architect of my own life. All those years of doubt, cold garages, and ramen noodles led here. It felt quiet, satisfying, complete. Sometimes the people who underestimate you the most are the ones who show you your true power. What's your story? Drop it in the comments.